Hello my dear students, and welcome once again to another video for our class in PF 101 Event Driven Programming. In this video we are going to tackle on how to handle events triggered by a list view in a JavaFX application. Let's get on with it. Alright, so we'll start off by creating a new project, and it's going to be a JavaFX project. I'm using version 11 for my JDK, and we'll call this donation log. All right, and it's going to ask me, this version of IntelliJ is going to ask, when you create a new JavaFX project, if I am going to import a Maven repository for JavaFX. I'm not going to do that because I already have a JavaFX SDK somewhere down here. All I have to do is put it into the project structure like I always do, and Java. Okay, and I think it's in here, dev sources and JavaFX live. Click OK, apply, then OK. And also another thing is, of course, our configuration here. We need to add VM options. It's gonna be module path is a string, but we're gonna call upon a variable, and also have add modules, be JavaFX FXML and JavaFX controls. And with that, we can now try and run our application. Let's see how if it's going to run or not. And there we go. We have a running application. So like I said in the introduction, we're gonna do handling events on coming from a list view. All right, this is also very similar to a combo box view. So I'm just going to use list view in this case, in this demonstration. So first we open up our fxml file to build up our UI. So I'm gonna open this up with scene builder, and again I'm gonna get rid of this grid pane. I'm gonna use an anchor pane instead, and don't forget to re-add the controller. So we are going to put a simple list view just for this example. I have here a list view. Drag this up here, put it in the middle right there, and you can attach these sides to the edges of our container by going through layout and here. So just click here and it says this is a number of pixels as a space between the edge, from edge to edge. I'm gonna adjust this to maybe 30, and this one also put 30 there. So now this list is going to adjust according to the width of the container, which is what I like. So also this one, I'm gonna put it there, maybe 100 for the bottom, and the top maybe another 30. All right, and so we have here our list view that adjusts to the sides, the edges, and we're just gonna put something inside here programmatically. So that's all there is to it that we're going to do for now in our scene builder, except of course the giving of fx id for this. I'll just call this my list. All right, and it says this message appears because there's no my list in the controller defined. So we go back here to the controller, make sure that this reloads, It's not reloading. I did not save it yet. So save that. And there we go. We now have this anchor pane. And one thing I also always forget is make this to 11. And experiencing this problem also with Melco, that the controller is not detected. Let's say sample dot controller. There you go. Just have to rewrite it. I don't know why that happens, but all right. Now let's try to run this program. Of course, there's nothing that is going to be shown here except the list view that is empty. Let's put some contents inside of our list view. So we go to our controller, and in here we're gonna define an fxml injector, and we'll be injecting a list view here. And again, if you remember, the name of the list view as suggested in the fx id is this guy, my list. So you put there my list. All right, and let's just give some data to our list view on load. And this is not the same with what we usually do, wherein we simply define a constructor, and that constructor will be executed when you instantiate an application, when you instantiate an object of that class. Since this is not like that, this is a controller, we are going to do it slightly different. And to do this, we are actually going to do initialization instead of calling the constructor. And to do that, we are first going to implement into the controller an interface called initializable, this one. And what this will require is a method. So just click here to implement the required method, and that method is going to be this one, initialize. And the way it goes is it simply opens up a new method, and this is where you're going to put your code that will be executed when this particular controller or after the fxml is being created, the UI. And we can do this right down here. And so what we can do is simply add some contents into our list view. First of all, we can set our list view to what type of data is going to be placed inside of this list view. In this example, we'll just use string. Okay. And there's an error here. Does not have type parameters. It should have type parameters. Anyway, I'll get to that later. So here we're going to do let's have a string, array of strings, and we'll call this list. So let's simply have a list of names, maybe. So we'll have Juan de la Cruz, Beverly, Marge. I'm just making up these names. I'm sorry if your name comes out. Alright, so there we go. We have our list of strings, or actually an array of strings, and we'll put this into our list here. Simply going to have a loop on our list, and inside of our loop we are simply going to call upon my list dot what's going on here, append. We're not going to do append, actually. We should say my list dot get forgot that method. Get items ba to? There's probably something wrong with my imports. Oh, there you go. I'm importing swing text HTML. That's wrong. So that was why I was not able to give a type parameter. So it should be list view scene control. Alright. And now here we can actually put the type parameter, which is we want to have a list view containing strings. And inside of my list here, we can say get items dot add, and you see what we can add is a string, and can just add there the str. Right, so that's how we populate our list view. Let's see if this actually did the trick. And there you go, we have now our list inside the list view. So by the way, it automatically shows out a scroll when all the contents inside the list view is no longer visible. So next we can do is to give to handle the event. So when you have a list, what you can do is you can click on an item in the list. What's going on in the background there is you're actually triggering a change event. The change that happened was the selection. You're changing selection. So that particular event is what we are going to handle. So that whenever you're not using your mouse, you're just using your keyboard to change item. That still that event is still triggered because it's changing the selection. So that is what we are going to do here. So we'll also do that within our initialization. I think we could do that in our initialization as well. What we can have here is we're gonna get the selection model. So go down, we'll say my list dot get selection model dot and this one get selected item property, and from here we can add a change listener or add a listener, and there are two listeners. We either add an invalid listener or we can add a change listener. So we're adding a change listener in this case. Okay, so we added. Let me just bump this down so that we can see. So we're adding a change listener, and what we can do inside is we put a listener here. Of course, we don't have a listener, so instead we are just going to create a listener inside of here. All right, so you can say here new change listener, and there goes that, and it's going to give us this inner class, and this inner class actually is an interface, and it requires a method called change, and it passes here the object that is that is the source of the event. In this case, this either an observable string or just the string value right here. Okay, s. Okay, so we can just grab that and maybe display it on our console for now. So it just say oops, and you selected, and then we pass in s. Remember, s is the string that is being passed as the source of the change event. All right, let's try this now. And take a look at here. When we click one and you have the selected null, selected Beverly. That's one thing I found out, that the first time, actually what is being taken is the previous one. So that was the when you click on the first one, you're actually getting null. As you can see, I'm choosing Henry right now, and so yeah, this probably is the previous one. Let's try doing the observable value. Let's see what we can see here. And it's just a property, but you can of course go inside the property. I think the new one is from here, T1. Let's try. All right, there you go. So S here is actually the previous selection, and T1 here is the current selection. All right, so that's how you do observe list view event. So to continue on with this demonstration, I'd like to create another. I'd like to create this application, but we'll be handling insertion on list, as well as uh, getting mouse clicks from the list. Okay, you can also use mouse click to handle event when you click on an item in the list, and so that's what we are going to do next. Okay, so first thing here is we need to change our UI. So in our UI, I'm going to add here some fields. Let me adjust this as well. So let's have 200. I think that would be fine. Maybe make it 230. All right, and we can add here a form. Let's first put a label, and this label here, maybe put here the last name, and then add a text field. All right, and I'll just duplicate this one. This will be first name, and another duplicate. This will be donation amount, and let's select them all, and we can do something like changing our font to maybe 14. Okay, and this is wrong. Also, maybe we need to move this a little bit, bump this down a little bit. Okay, so don't worry if my UI looks terrible. Anyway, our actual lesson is all about event handling. And one more thing, we'll add a button. I'm gonna add a button somewhere down. What's this? It's an that one, this one. Let's call this save changes. Okay, I think that would be it for this. By the way, we also need to attach this to the side and the bottom, so it moves with the window. And this is too far. Maybe make it just 50, 55 would be fine. There you go. And save this. Of course, we need to identify some few things here. We have already identified our list view. We need to identify our fields. So in the code here, we have selected this donation amount. We give it an ID of donation amount. And this one will be first name field. And we call this last name field. Okay, so go back to our code here. And we're not going to initialize our list anymore. Also, our list is not going to be a string anymore. In fact, we are going to create a new class in this case. Create a new class, and we'll just call this class donor. And this donor is going to have the same data as our form there. So we'll have a string for last name, a string for first name, and we'll have a float for donation amount. There you go. And we'll give this a constructor. That's going to have all of them inside. And of course, we'll also have some getters and setters. And finally, we'll also have an override method for the toString, because this toString override is going to be the one that will be displayed on the list view. So what do we want to be displayed on the list view? We're gonna display the last name. That last name, followed by a comma, followed by the first name. That's the one that we want to be placed on the list view for every item as a representation of this one particular object, which is in this case a donor object. So we have that. And so here, instead of having strings, we'll have donor instead. So now this is going to be a problem. We'll generate this later. All right. Let's leave that empty for now. What we want to do is we want that we can type something in our form, and when we click on save changes, that data inside that form will be transformed into a donor and added into the list, and so it will be displayed into the list view. So we need to grab this event here. So in our save changes, we create an what's this, a method. Yeah, we'll be using this one. So we have here, it's better to add it here. Let me also show you this. We can have a button here. In our button, we can add on and then action. And when we type something here, like for example, save button, and of course this is going to be red because this particular method does not exist, but you can have it here. And let's see, it's supposed to be a suggestion of creating that method into our controller, but it seems to be not working right now. So anyway, we'll just add this save button into our controller. Public void save button. Of course, this is going to have an action event. Again, be careful with the action event. It should be the JavaFX, not from the AWT. And like so. And if we do that, check back to our sample, it's still not working. Page language not specified. I don't know what that is. Anyway, let's try doing it on the scene builder instead. Here, oh, there's the save button already. There you go. That's better. That's what happened. Let's see. Oh, okay. I forgot the pound sign. That's silly of me. All right. So what we can do here is read out the contents of our text fields, which are these three, and create a donor object that can be added into the list view. So to do that, we need to have handle of these components, and of course we already named this last name field, first name field, and donation amount. So we can just inject it into our um, controller. So we'll have here a text field, and this is the last name field. Of course, we need to import this, and just copy this one. So this will be the first name field, and this is the donation amount. So we can grab that right here. But we need to convert the donation amounts content into float, because this is of course a string. So we're gonna put this inside of a try catch. We'll have float of amount is equal to float dot parse float the donation amount dot get text. Okay, and we'll have a catch of number format exception. And we'll just have an alert here. This should be the alert type of error, and just have a header text of you must enter a number valid amount. And of course show this. Now for the rest of the data, it's already in text, so no problem. We'll just create now our donor object, and we pass in first the last name field dot get text, then the first name field dot get text, and of course the amount right there. And we simply add this to our my list. So my list dot get list, get items actually, dot add, and now look at the add method. It's now asking for donor, and so we can pass ND. Okay, so let's try if this works. Of course, we no longer have contents into our list. Okay, now let's try having me as a donor, and I'm donating 5 pesos only. Click on save changes, and there you go. I am in the list, and we should clear out our form after that. All right, so let's add another one. Say lambanog protasio, and 10 pesos. Okay, so if this is not a number, you must enter a valid amount. All right, so that works. What we can do is clear out the form when we click save changes. So let's just create a method here that is called clear, which is going to call upon the last name field, and we set the text to null, and just copy this 3 times. We'll have the first name and donation amount, And we can also put the cursor into the last name field if you want to. And here it's actually called request focus. All right. Next is, we would like that when we click on an item in the list, its content. Now let's run this first. Okay. So let's have this. Oh. Okay. So we have this. Again, we did not call the clear. I only created the clear, but did not invoke it. What a silly thing to do. But anyway, I would like that when we click an item, the contents of that item should be displayed on the form, and then we can do changes. And when we click save, it's going to save the changes, but instead of inserting a new one. That's the next thing we are going to do here. But first, we have to call on clear when we click on save button. Right here, clear. Now we need to do something with this because our save button is now going to do two things. But before that, let's implement first the clicking of an item in the list box in the list view. And once that's done, the selected items values will be reflected into the form. So that's again here in our initialize, because we're going to add a change listener to our my list. So here we say my list that gets selection model that selected item property, and then we are going to add a change listener. And let's bump this down just as before. So here we say new change listener, and we're going to grab this one. Just call this selected, okay, so that it's readable. And we are going to assign this into a property here. So we are going to have a donor. This is called selected. So what we can do here is we assign that this at selected. Actually, no. I think we should change the name here to this one na lang. Because we cannot say this because this is now an inner class. If we say this here, it pertains to this change listener. But since we have a different name for our property from above, we can assign it like so. And now we'll just grab this data. Yeah, so we put this now into our form. We'll just create a method to do this. I'll call this method reflect or to form. Just call that like that. And we pass in we don't have to pass in because we already assigned that to the selected donor. So we can have private void reflect to form. And here we can say last name field that set text, and we pass on the selected donor dot get last name. Then here first name field dot set text, we'll have selected donor dot get first name. Oops. And finally we are going to do donation amount. Oops, not that. Donation amount dot set text to string that value of, because it's a float, we say selected donor dot get donation amount. All right. And again, we can put the focus on the last name. So last name field that request focus. Okay, let's see if this works now. It could have been great if we already have some contents inside, but we don't. So save one and it clears. Save another one. Reyes Antonio donated 900. There you go. So when we click on Lenteria, the contents of Lenteria was 200, donated 200, and Antonio should have 900. All right, so that works. So next thing is when we click on save changes and we did have some changes here, it should change the data of this particular donor instead of inserting a new one. Okay, so because right now if we save changes, it's going to insert that, because all our save button does is add to our my list, and we should change that. So what we can do here is we are going to put this in a separate method, and we call this method, let me call this method add. Okay, so we have here private void add and paste it there. But we are only going to add if our selected donor is not there. If we have not selected any donor, which means that this should be null in the first place. So to be safe, let me assign this with a null value. Okay. So if it's null, we are going to add. So we say here, if selected donor equals null, we are going to do add. Else, we're going to do update instead. But we don't have update yet. So let's put that here. Create a new method called update. And what we can do is grab this again. Actually do a try catch again. And that. And instead of creating a new, we are going to set the values of the selected donor. We're going to say selected donor, that's set last name. We get the last name field that get text here. And let's just copy this to make it quicker. And this one set first name instead. And we get the first name field. And finally, we'll have set donation amount. And we're going to put in here our amount. And then we call upon clear once more. Okay. So let's try this. And again, I'll have to add once again. Let's see. Have that donation. Have that donation 9,000. Suppose if I'm going to change this to 5,000 instead and click on save, see it's not added. So when we click again on Benji and now have only 5,000 as our donation. For this one second, for example, this was not the case. Instead, it should be Generica Protasia and make this 10,000 and save. There it goes. When we click it again, we have Generica Protasia 10,000. So we're able to change the data of our list item. So that is all for this session. Thank you so much for watching and see you again in the next one.